Hi, I'm Luke. This is my reflection for Module 4. So we're going to get into the economic side of cities, how the economy has changed, how work and real estate are shifting, and how cities are investing in infrastructure. The first required reading was Elizabeth Wilson's chapter Beyond Good and Evil and the Sphinx City. So this chapter continues her larger argument about how cities have been shaped by attempts to control disorder and how ideas about right and wrong get built into how we plan and police urban space. So it's a dense read, but the core theme fits that what we've read from her before. Cities aren't neutral. The way we design and regulate them reflects deeper assumptions about the order and who deserves safety and freedom. The next required reading was Knox and Pinch's chapter, The Changing Economic Context of Cities. This chapter walks through how cities have shifted from being centers of industrial manufacturing to being centers of service, finance, and information-based work. And that shift changed which cities thrive and which ones struggle, since places built around factories had to reinvent themselves once manufacturing moved elsewhere. And yes, they do. It's really cool to see how you have these old factories and companies or whatever will come in and just modernize the inside. I think it's the coolest look ever, having the old brick but modern inside with a new modern business. So in John Naisbitt's Megatrends, the chapter National Economy and the World Economy, argues that the U.S. was moving away from being mostly self-sufficient national economy into being a more part of a much bigger interdependent global economy, sourcing stuff from China. So Naisbitt points out that manufacturing that used to be dominated by the U.S., like steel and cars, was already shifting to other countries by the time he wrote this in the early 80s. That trend obviously kept on going long after this book came out. Can the economy grow forever? Ask whether infinite growth is possible on a planet with limited resources, and I think no. It lays out the standard argument that a growing economy is necessary to keep improving people's lives, but also introduces the idea of post-growth economy. One that focuses on things like renewable energy, healthcare, public transportation, instead of just chasing GDP growth all the time. And I think we need to start focusing more on renewable sources now already and recycling more. Because why are we not planning for the future? Everything's just so money grab, have it now. American cities have always been changing, and COVID took them to a new direction. Yes, cities were already evolving into this remote-based work. You don't need to be in person, and COVID basically accelerated that tremendously. And why does it have to take something like COVID to make a process more efficient? Because that saves the company more money, and I'm sure a lot of people do enjoy working from home. I don't know if I would. I'm sure if I had kids, I would. So, real estate expert answers U.S. housing crisis questions from Wired, goes through common questions about why housing has become so unaffordable, pointing to limited housing supply, high demand, and rising costs as major factors. And two of my brothers just bought houses in the last year, and it's kind of just, it's a really big deal because one of them's 25 and the other one's 29. So that's good for them, both in the military. But regardless, the new barrier for entry, like my parents didn't have it, but the barrier for entry to buy a house now is just skyrocketed. And buying one house, moving to the next, you're kind of evening out, you're leveling out, but the barrier for entry is just ridiculously high now. City infrastructure policies, lessons from research from Stanford's Graduate School of Business, looks at how research on cities decides where to invest in infrastructure and what separates smart investment from wasted spending. So in Blacksburg, we have this overpass that was going to connect Blacksburg to Roanoke way long ago, and project ran out of money, never happened. So now we just have an overpass sitting there. For my first additional resource, I looked at Ismail Kaloun's article in the New Yorker, The World Keeps Getting Richer. Some people are worried. The piece looks at the ongoing debate around global economic growth and why some people are actually concerned about the world keeps getting richer, tying back in the same growth versus post-growth debate from the TED Ed video. For my second additional resource, I watched Ezra Klein on the Abundance Agenda from Conversations with Tyler. Klein argues that instead of shrinking the economy, the better path is to build more, faster, more housing, more energy, more infrastructure, and removing the barriers that make it slow and expensive to build things today. So putting this model together, the big theme for me is that cities and economies are always caught between growth and limits, and between building fast and building carefully. And obviously the biggest limit around Blacksburg is the town of Blacksburg. Everyone knows that building with them is the most difficult thing you'll ever experience. And again, I use Perplexity to help me organize my thoughts and build a good flow to go through. The end.